friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here today to talk about how you can modify your top to fit either your style or modesty level. And I'm talking mostly about things that are V-neck. So maybe like in the case of this particular tank top that I'm wearing right now, I had bought it, I didn't try it on in the store, and it had a V-neck in it. And then when I got it home, and it was on clearance, by the way, and put it on, I realized it was way too low. And so this was quite a number of years ago. And so then what I did was I simply just made it a lace-up neck top so that it would be more modest and I can tighten up however I want. Now, obviously the easy fix is to wear a tank top under there, another tank top that comes up higher, and just layering. And for you ladies out there who are also trying to get away from the standard, especially underwire bra, something more natural and comfortable, especially those of you who are in this stage of life where certain things are just so uncomfortable to wear anyway. I do have a video on how you can make your own support top, and it looks basically just like a tank top, just a cropped tank top. And I'll go ahead and link to that old video down below, but that's what I do. I've been making my own support tops for a good number of years and I love them. And so the other nice thing about them is I've got a gray one on right now. Sometimes I'll have a black one on, and it also works as an added layer of modesty because I make them come up higher like a tank top would, so I can wear it under any V-neck whether I have a lace on it or not. And then this is also just a way that you can modify something just to make it, to give it more interest, as in the case of this shirt here. Now, ever since I was in high school, I've always been one to modify my clothes to suit me, not anyone else, but me personally. And I've always hated t-shirts or hoodies that rubbed against my throat right here. That's always bothered me. I can't stand that. And so when my son bought me this shirt a number of years ago, because he's a lieutenant on the fire department, so firefighter mom, it was your standard pullover hoodie that, again, can't stand the feel of it on my throat. So what I did was I cut a slit into it here and then just put a lace in it. So not only could I get away from having it rubbing against the front of my neck, I could also just give it a little more interesting look that way and make it more unique. What you'll want to have is some kind of lace. It can be one you crochet yourself, which I'm going to show you how I do, but if you don't crochet, just a shoelace will work in any color. That's the great thing about shoelaces is they already got the aglets at the end that make them easy for threading through holes, and you can get them in any color or even pattern these days that you want. And maybe you just have some old shoelaces or even a tie from an old pair of sweats or something that's still in great shape, but you're not using the sweats anymore. You can use something like that. And another thing you might want to have, I'm not going to use them, I never do, but that's grommets. So if you're doing this to a shirt that isn't either a t-shirt like this or a sweatshirt like that, you're going to need to have grommets to prevent fraying. Or if you're just wanting a more finished look, you can get grommets, and if you don't have them or even the little hand press that goes with it, you can actually buy a grommet kit for pretty inexpensive, and it is a good idea to have one on hand. I personally don't have one because I never use grommets, but I'm thinking about getting it just to have it on hand to go with some of my arts and crafts prepping supplies or clothing repair prepping supplies, however you want to look at it, because it's pretty inexpensive. And I'll go ahead and link to a kit or two or even a search for them. But as I said, I'm not going to be using those. So another thing to have on hand is some kind of ruler, a measuring instrument, and you'll also want to figure out how high up on your shirt you're going to want to take that lacing. So what you want to do is determine how far apart do you want your holes on your shirt. Now, a lot of times I just eyeball and I don't measure it out, but it may be best, especially if you're very particular, to measure it out. So going by the distance I put on this, I'm going to use that as my guideline. That's what makes these kind of rulers nice, is that especially if you can't really see the lines or the numbers, you can use your little sewing ruler like this and mark it where you want it. It can be a Sharpie, it can be just a light colored pencil like I've got here, and I recommend going out about, let's see, maybe close to an inch or maybe a little shy of an inch from the inside part of your neckline here, and then put your mark and on either side just below the bottom part where you want it to start, just below that. So if you did like the sweatshirt here, you can see I put my holes just below where I finished putting the slit in the shirt. And make sure, by the way, that your shirt is laying out even. So I like to take the shoulder seams and make sure they're both right at the top like this before I get started, because that's going to ensure I put the holes in the right place. I actually think I want it a little wider than that anyway. I'm going to go with about a full inch. So in that case, I'll just use my knuckle like this. It makes a good measuring device. That equals right about 1 inch. And as long as you just keep using the same measuring utensil or device, you can just keep working your way up. So for this, I'm just going to put 3 holes because it's really not that low on me anyway. But depending on how much you want it to open and how far you want the lacing, you may even want it here even if you don't lace it tight here. Now, another thing to keep in mind, just like on this shirt here, is because it's not meant to be that way, because it's already a V-neck, it's going to bunch right here. And just keep that in mind. So if you're doing something like this where you cut a slit in it, it's not going to be a big deal. But something that's a V-neck, once you start pulling that in, you're going to have bunching down here. Okay, so now I'm going to mark up the other side 1 inch for a couple more holes. Okay, so the next thing will be, it just depends on what you want to use, what you feel more comfortable. Using a seam ripper, the sharp end is actually the easiest way to do this. You can just poke a hole. It's a little safer than using a pair of scissors. You're less likely to end up cutting yourself a big hole. You just want to poke your holes right where you made your marks. And you can see those holes are actually pretty small, but because this is t-shirt material or a stretch knit, when I go to thread my lacing in there, they'll stretch out to fit the lacing. And which is just another reason why I like using t-shirts for this, or even sweatshirts. So this is the same yarn here that I used on the shirt that I'm wearing, and I'm going to go ahead and use that again. But you can use black, white, any color you want, or any color you want to bring out. I was thinking another option would be going with a color like this that looks kind of like leather. So, you know how you see some of the, like on more Renaissance type clothing, it might see leather type lacing and tops like that. So this would be an option. In fact, since I already have this one in this color, maybe I will go ahead and use the brown for this. And when I do this, I'm usually using a J hook. You can go H or I. Now, if you're going to double up your yarn and you want it thicker than this, then you may want to use up to a K hook if you're using 2 or 3 strands. So that just depends on how thick you want it to be. Like this tie is done with 3 strands of yarn to get that thickness, where this was just a single strand right here. And that's what I'm going to do here. I don't want it real thick. So that's all dependent on you. Now this isn't a crochet lesson. If you want to learn how to chain, I have a whole playlist on how to crochet. It's a Crochet 101 where I teach how to read patterns and then go through the basic stitches one at a time. So basically I'm just going to start doing my chain stitch. And what I'm going to do is, since I don't know exactly how much I need, I'm just going to start crocheting and then I'm going to lay it out, and I'll show you how I do that so I can figure out just how long I need it to be, or at least get a close idea, because that can be the tricky part, is not knowing just how much you need when you're crocheting it like this. I know I'm going to need more, but I want to get an idea how much more. So what I'm going to do is I simply lay it across my shirt like this, with it stretched out like this, not bringing it in tight. Find the center of where I'm at, right here, and then I just crisscross it to where I have my marks. So that gives me an idea, because it'd be better to guess with it stretched out rather than it pulled tight, because then it'll give you a better idea. It's better to have too much than too little, and then you might want to have some more overhang. I'm going to start with adding about approximately 6 more inches and then see how that looks, and I might even go up to adding a whole 12 inches to this. Okay, that should be about 6 inches. That was 18 more stitches. So I guess about 3 stitches per inch. So let's see what that looks like. I think I'd like to add a little bit more. You always want to figure more than less. Plus, I'm going to be tying the ends, and so I'm going to need extra for that. So I think I will add another 6 inches just to be safe. If worst comes to worst, you can always shorten it, but it's best when you're doing a crochet tie like this not to have to cut anything off of it. So I'm going to do another 18 stitches. Okay, let's go ahead and check it again before I cut that, just to make sure. And then if I look at it and decide, you know what, that's too long, then you just pull your stitches out. You don't want to finish it off until you see for sure. Notice, just like when I started, how much leader I left, and I'm going to leave that much again, and I'll explain why in a little bit. Now to thread it, there's a couple of different ways you can start. You can start with it so you have this little part going across the front here if you want, which means if you're going to do it that way, you're going to want to push your yarn, your tie, whatever it is, through from the front to start with. Just like that. Now I don't usually do it that way. I usually start from the back. So it just really depends on the look you're looking for. You might want to try it a couple times just to see how it looks. So you don't want to tie any knots in the end of your tie until you get it finished. So now I'm going to look at it this way. Now either way, I think it's best to come from the back for the next. And this is why I don't usually start it that way, because when I get to this, I want it coming out the front. So that's why I personally never start it that way. You may end up wanting to just put a couple extra holes real close together, maybe down here, so that you can have that little piece coming across and then lace it up from the inside out from that point on. It's all going to be up to you. This is just the way I always do it here. So after you get the first 2 holes, the bottom holes, make sure you line your tie up so it's even. It's easier to do it from this point, but you'll have to check it as you go. You might end up pulling one side a little harder than the other and end up with it a little off. It will happen in the wash from time to time too. So I forgot to check my length as I was going up on that last lacing, so it looks like I'm off a little bit. You can also use a pair of tweezers to grab that and pull it through. That might be easier than trying to use your fingernails, or if you just don't have any fingernails. And so there we go. Actually, I gave myself plenty. I could go up 1 more hole if I so decided. Now usually I just do it this way. I just leave it loose, but if you leave yourself enough because you actually want to tie a bow in it, that's another idea. I don't really care for the way that looks myself. I think it looks kind of dumb, but that's my personal opinion. And then what I would do with the ends is I'm going to cut myself a couple of extra little short pieces of yarn to make basically a little tassel. Now I didn't do that on the shirt that I'm wearing right now, but you can see I did that here with this red. And so how I do that, all you need is, for something like this small, you just need 2. Because you're going to double it over anyway, so you're actually going to end up with 5 little pieces in that tassel, and for something like this, that's going to be plenty. Of course, some of it too will depend on how thick your yarn is. And it might be better, I'm still using the J hook here, it might be better to go up to the next size hook when you're bringing that through. So after I make my tassel, and I'll do the other one slower so you can see how I do that, I then tie a knot right over the top of that tassel so that that will hold it firmly in place. And then I trim to the length I want. Okay, so now let me do this next one a little slower in case you didn't see how I did that. So I loop the yarn over my finger, stick the hook through the end stitch of the tie, grab with the hook the loop end of the tassels, or the loop end of the yarn, and then pull it through like that. Okay, now you can either use your hook, like I'm going to do right here, or you can reach through with your fingers and grab it, but this is kind of short, so I'm using the hook to reach through and pull it like that. Okay, and then again, tying a knot right over the top just to make sure that's gonna hold. That's how I do all the ties on my skirts. So you can see, like in this hair tie right here, I do the same thing here. So same idea. After I make the tassel, still tie a knot over the top of that tassel just to hold it in place. And when you're talking about something like a shirt like this, once you have that knot in there, that's going to make that tie a lot less likely to come out. And this is really long. I did add a lot of excess to that. But I just kind of wanted to show you. And then that way, if I want to go ahead and add that fourth hole, I've actually got plenty to work with, and that would be perfect. In fact, I might go ahead and do that, even though I already got the knots in there. I do just think it looks best when you have at least 4 holes on each side when you do the lacing. And then you'll just want to pull this and kind of stretch it in such a way so it's not too bunchy down here at the bottom of the V. And there you have it. There's just an easy no-sew way that you can modify your shirt to either make it more modest or just give it that little flair that you would like. And by the way, last year I did a video on how to take a t-shirt and temporarily modify it in a cute no-sew way into a tank top, again using ties like this, and I'll link to that video down below. I do that quite a bit with my t-shirts, and then when I don't want it to be a tank top anymore, I just take the ties off. So you can go ahead and see how I did that in the video down below. And remember to check out, if you're interested in learning how to crochet, remember to check out that playlist I'll be putting down below, and I'll also go ahead and put my sewing playlist as well if you're interested in learning how I make skirts out of old sheets and other things. I have tops, and then again the support top, all kinds of stuff in that list. All right, well, thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.